All right. So we're recording. I'm with Maeve Sundstrom.
Yeah.
Do you go by Sundstrom?
Yeah.
Okay. I almost said your maiden name. And we are going to discuss coping with the pains of labor for Savage Wellness. We host these webinars every Wednesday or every few Wednesdays to discuss all things health and wellness and bring you some awesome information with some fun people. Maeve, let's get started. Tell us a little bit about yourself too first and your practice.
Yeah. So Maeve Sundstrom, I'm a licensed midwife, and I provide care to primarily people who are wanting to birth at home. So I do a full scope of midwifery care, prenatal care, labor and birth at home, postpartum and newborn care for the first 6 weeks, including group prenatal and postpartum care. So that helps moms and dads build community, get to know other birthing couples, and I think one of the big deficits in our culture around birth is the community piece, which is part of why we're here, right? That's exactly what you're working on, not just for pregnancy, but for everybody. And that's a passion of mine in the work that I do. Yeah. So the topic for tonight is about coping with labor. And this is a topic that is of interest to everybody who's pregnant and expecting a baby, no matter what your plans are for what type of birth experience you think you want. Labor inevitably comes with some surprises and some high intensity moments. And sometimes that's physical intensity, pain or nausea or fatigue or those kinds of things. Sometimes it's emotional intensity, surprises in labor, unexpected events. All of those things can be challenging to cope with in the moment as they arise. And so
I think I went through each of those.
Yeah.
Physical pain, mental anguish.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
And part of why I wanted to talk about this topic is that this is true for everyone, regardless of where you're planning to give birth, how you're planning to give birth. Everybody needs preparation for the experience. So so that's how we came to this topic. And what I really want to talk about tonight is the practice of preparing our internal worlds and our minds for coping with the labor process. There's lots and lots of information out there about physical, practical, kind of external things to do for labor, and everything from position changes and massage, water, hot and cold, TENS unit, epidurals, all sorts of things. I think a lot of that information is well represented already. It's kind of easy to find that. And some of that really takes care of itself in the labor process. You do what needs to be done at the time. And, your support people have ideas and things occur to you. But I think a piece that is often overlooked and tends to be actually more challenging for people in labor is the internal coping, the mental and emotional coping with the process. There's a lot of unknown and challenges and surprises and discomfort, all of that. So that's what I wanted to talk about tonight.
Cool, I love it.
Yeah, good.
Do you want to screen share? Do you have stuff you want to put on the screen, or do you want to just...
I don't.
Okay.
I do have a little experiential thing for folks who watch this video to do. You can try it if you want to do it.
Maybe.
Otherwise, just anyone who watches later can do it, but you don't need to see my screen for it.
Okay.
All right. Um, so I think where I want to start with this is creating defining a couple of concepts, and one is pain and one is suffering. And these two are not the same thing, even though often they feel like they are. And I think that's a really important concept for labor, because most people experience pain in labor. Mm-hmm. And that is true even if you're planning to get an epidural or other type of pharmacological pain relief, or even if you're having a planned cesarean, there's pain associated with that. And if you're having an unmedicated birth, even if you're like totally committed and in it and things are rocking and rolling and working well, pain is not surprisingly part of the experience. Your body is opening in such a big way. So much is going on. And I think it's not surprising that there's a high level of intensity of physical experience with that. And so, the point that I'm going towards is that the pain of labor is pain with a purpose. It's different from other types of pain that we experience, in that, most of the time, if we're feeling a high level of physical intensity and pain, that's not a good thing. We need to do something about that. And pain does serve that purpose of really getting our attention, which is important in labor. But as opposed to needing to kind of fix or solve it, in labor, it's really a matter of coping with it and moving through it. And so that's where the idea of differentiating pain and suffering comes in, because pain in and of itself, there's no judgment to that. It's just a physical experience that's happening. Suffering is everything that we tell ourselves about it. This is so hard. If it feels like this now, I won't be able to do it later. What if this happens? What if this doesn't happen? What if I scream? What if I swear? All of those things that go through people's minds when they're in labor can really take. Yeah, exactly. What if I poop? What if I throw up? Someone threw up on my shoes one time during a birth, and they were just horrified, and she had a really hard time getting over that, and I think it really increased her distress. Yeah. Even though I was like, whatever, it's, happens, wasn't a big deal. So, yeah. So the goal of what we're going to practice tonight is not so much about eliminating pain. My view is that pain is a normal part of the process of giving birth and does not in and of itself mean there's a problem or something needs to be fixed. But we can go a long way to reducing suffering, so that we can just let the experience be what it is without so many judgments about ourselves or others or things that really take us away from our ability to just continue moving through the experience. And I'm imagining that, with all of your like athletic background, you have had to master these kinds of skills too.
Absolutely. It's funny, Dan, my husband, just had shoulder surgery. Yeah. And it's the first time he's ever been like out of commission, like had something that stays painful and can't be used right. And I'm having the hardest time empathizing because it's so normal to me. I mean, I've not been able to use probably every part of my body at one point or the other, and I've had tons of insane breaks and injuries. And it does. He's like, oh, the mental side, and I'm like, yeah, that's the side I just can't empathize with. Like, to me, it's not that weird to say, don't use your arm for 2 months. Yeah.
So I'm curious what you have done, or how did you learn how to deal with that? Do you know what you do that helps you?
I think it's because I started so young. I just, I first talked to myself about, like, the hardest part is when I don't know what's wrong. So if I don't know how bad it is, or so that initial pain and just wondering, what have I done, especially when it was my back or when my knee or whatever. And then it's just sort of like, once it's just kind of getting through it, like, and telling yourself, this is your life now, and everything's going to be okay. Your knee is going to hurt. Your back is going to hurt for a while. You can't make certain movements. So a lot of just kind of explaining it, but I think it's just so second nature to me. Although you saw me during birth and it did not look like second nature. Or you might have missed that really intense part. But
well, it's totally
that
different.
Was not second nature.
It is a totally different thing, which is why, practicing in advance is important. The skills that we all go into birth with can really serve us, things that we're used to doing in our lives to cope with just what you're talking about, pain or fatigue, or, sometimes I'll even talk to people who've, gotten a PhD or something like that, and the intensity of that process, all sorts of life experiences count. Labor is part of your life. You're still you when you're laboring. So things that are going to work for you are likely to help you in labor. And it pays to build your toolbox a little bit and, learn from the wealth of knowledge of people who've been giving birth for thousands of years about what tends to work well for labor that might be different from what works well in life, but often can translate. A lot of the skills for labor coping become skills for coping with parenting and everything else in life. So, and that's certainly true of the practices that I want to do tonight. They're all based in mindfulness, which really just means focusing your mind. A lot of times in labor and in life, it's easy to get a little bit spun out. Our these amazing, powerful brains that we have that are so good at thinking and making up stories and having ideas and thinking about the past and the future and all of that aren't really so helpful in labor. The part of us that we need to give birth is not that same part. And so mindfulness practices are useful in just helping to quiet down all of that extra chatter that really doesn't help us when we're trying to give birth. It's the old brain that knows how to give birth. And I think it's actually reassuring to know that, you don't have to know how it works or how it's going to happen in order for it to work and to happen. You don't have to think your way through it. Your body knows that. So the task for labor is to quiet the mind so that the body can do its thing. Something else I was going to say about that's gone. Anyway.
Just focus.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 p.m. on a weekday, I got my stress relieving tea.
There you go. Oh, I got it. I was going to say doing mindfulness practices to help quiet the mind actually really mimics and reinforces what is happening physiologically in labor already, which is that the hormones of labor begin to quiet the prefrontal cortex, like thinking, rational decision making, and language parts of the brain are actually chemically quieted, which is why it can be hard to remember what questions you had in labor or what your preference was about XYZ medication or procedure. Like, those things are really hard. That's not what our brain is really doing in labor. So mindfulness is a way to reinforce that and support that process and make way for the body to do its work.
Cool.
So for you or anybody who watches this later and wants to practice, there's a few ways to do it. You can either get a bowl with some ice cubes and a cloth so that you can hold ice during the practices. or you can do something like, hold your arms out to the side in a way that they'll get fatigued and kind of uncomfortable after a little bit, or you can do like a squat or a lunge, something like that. People can choose.
I'm looking for a wall. I could do wall.
Okay.
I'm ready to get in position.
What's that?
Did I get in position now?
Not quite yet. But if people wanted to get ice, now would be a good time to do it. Or I guess if they're watching later, they can pause and get it.
That's true.
But the idea is to choose something that will be kind of uncomfortable so that you have something that you have to cope with. Because how do you know, if you're learning a coping practice, but all you're doing is sitting comfortably in your living room, listening to me talk, there's not really anything to cope with. It's very easy to do. It'll be very relaxing, which is nice, but doesn't give you any information about whether or not this is going to help you in labor. And also doesn't give you any information about what your mind is doing and telling you when you are dealing with pain and discomfort, which is another really important piece of labor preparation. Like investigating, what is my response to pain? What do I tell myself when I experience pain? Because those things will crop up in labor, and it can be much easier to let them go and let your body do its work if you can recognize them and go, oh yeah, that's that thing my mind does that says I have to get out of this and I'm gonna die or whatever. Let's just let that go, because I know that's not true. Right. And just keep going. All right, so the first step, we're gonna try 3 different things tonight. The first one is to get a little bit of a baseline for yourself. So before I actually introduce how to do any of these mindfulness practices, we'll do one kind of contraction, ice contraction or squat contraction or whatever it's going to be, where you and anyone who watches this can have the experience of just feeling the discomfort, feeling the yuck, and just hearing what your mind starts saying to you when you're not actively, doing anything to cope with that. It's really informative to just hear, like, wow, what is really going on in there? Yeah. And so, I guess choose your choose your poison.
I'm gonna pin the video on me starting when you want to start talking.
Okay.
So that, unless you have anything that you're doing on the screen, people can watch my reaction.
There's nothing that I'm doing. Yeah, it's really more for them to have like their internal experience. So
cool. Yeah. Just to give them something visual here, or let's see. Okay. Okay. Here we go.
Okay. So I'm gonna ring the bell, and that is. Okay, start again. I'm ringing the bell. That's the start of the contraction.
I already worked out today.
All right, so you're feeling it. Yeah, so just let yourself notice whatever your brain is telling you, whatever your body is telling you. Notice where your mind wants to go when you're working with some discomfort. You're about halfway there.
Only halfway.
Okay, you can stop.
All right, how do I unpin? Can't. How about this? I'll post you. I'll pin you.
Did you notice anything you want to say about what your mind was doing or telling you while you were doing that?
Well, at first, I was like, oh man, another squat, which I did feel during labor, like, oh man,
Uh-huh.
another contraction.
Uh-huh.
And then it was like, you could just end this at any time. You don't have to do this exercise.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, you're doing this with Maeve.
Yeah.
Do it. You've done squats before and wall sits before.
Yeah.
And then I just started finding my happy place, which is like this little breathing exercise I do with like different colors and weird
Uh-huh.
skills I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating to notice this same thing happens every time I do this with people, that they almost can't not do something to cope. And I think that's a powerful message to take home, is that we have these depths of resources, just by living this far in life, that we're, pregnant and getting ready to have a baby. We all have both habitual coping strategies and learned coping strategies. And, even without any support or guidance, you were able to do that. And I think that that's important to know going into labor.
Yeah, it's true. Just sort of your second nature kicks in, right? And then you are like, okay, you start telling yourself whatever you usually do to get through hard things. So that's interesting that you use that in labor. I mean, obviously, but
but just to point it out, because sometimes people think, oh, well, I'm not doing anything, or I'm not coping, or I don't have any ideas for how I'm going to cope with labor.
Right. Or they're like, I can't handle pain and I'm just going to pass out.
Yeah.
You can do it. Yeah. It's cool.
So trying something like you just did kind of tells you, oh, actually, I didn't know that I was going to cope this way, but it just came out of me and I did it. Yeah. All right. So now I'm actually going to help you. Give you something that might reduce your suffering in that wall sit, or whatever you choose to do.
I'm doing some more wall sits.
Okay. All right. So this first one is just called breath awareness. And breath awareness is a great place to start because our breath is always with us. It's so natural. And we can rely on our breath in any circumstance, no matter what type of labor you're having, what type of birth you're having, or whatever type of parenting challenges you're having. Your breath is always with you, and you can always use this tool. And the idea with breath awareness is that, our bodies are really smart about regulating things like our heart rate and our digestion and our breathing. So we can trust that our bodies will know how to breathe when we're in labor. We naturally breathe differently when we're asleep versus when we're exercising or whatever it is. And so we can trust that our bodies will do that in labor also. And, some people like to use particular breathing techniques, like yoga people tend to like to use their yoga breathing or whatever it is. And that's perfectly fine to do, but not necessary per se. And so when we're doing breath awareness, the idea is to allow your breathing to be whatever it is, and just to use your focus and your attention on your breath as a place to calm your mind and your body, to let go into the process. And so you can do this with eyes open or eyes closed. I'll lead you into it a little bit before you squat, so you've got a little bit of a rhythm established. And then I'll ring the bell when it's time to start your wall sit, and I'll ring again when your contraction is done.
Got
it. All right. So just let your attention turn inward a little bit and begin to focus your mind on the sensations of breath moving through your body. So noticing first, where is there movement in your body when you breathe? What are the physical sensations of air moving in and out? And then bring your attention especially to your outward breath. It's natural for the mind to wander a little bit when we do this. And so each outward breath is your call back to attention on your breathing. And the outward breath is also the breath of letting go and release. So that's a great place to focus your attention in labor. Okay, so continue your breath practice as your contraction begins. And remember that each breath out is your call back to focus, back to the sensations of your breath. Okay. Yeah, you can stand up.
That's what it was too. All right.
Anything different that time around?
Yes, but I'm not sure if it was because it was the second time or not. I think it was, being able to focus on the breathing made it so I wasn't going immediately negative, like ouch, ouch, ouch. Just kind of like, okay, this is happening, and I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I would pay attention to my legs.
Yeah.
And then I would breathe out, and that would remind me to think about breathing and life and how amazing it is to be alive and that I get to do wall sits and talk to Dave. So I think it was helpful.
Yeah.
It was definitely helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a different experience when our mind kind of, when we're telling it, go back to here, even though it wanders. If we have a place, a destination that we know is where we're trying to go, really helps.
Yeah.
And it's true, what you experienced, that of course you still felt your legs, that was still happening.
Yeah.
And that's the same in labor. It's not like doing mindfulness or any type of labor preparation is going to eliminate the sensations of labor. We really don't want that. If that happened, you'd be having your baby on the sidewalk or like, that's not the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna feel the ice if you're holding the ice. You're gonna feel your legs if you're doing the wall sits. But ideally, hopefully, the mental pain and suffering goes down.
Seemed to work for me.
Okay.
Just wall squat. I don't know. Little different.
Kind of putting you on the spot here. This is kind of a video for everyone, and they're all listening to your experiences.
Yeah.
But so far, what you've expressed is pretty common. A lot of people have similar types of feelings. Okay. So when people are practicing at home, we won't do it for the video just for length of time, but when you're practicing at home, it's best to do kind of a series of contractions. So do, 3, 4, 5, 6 1-minute contractions with a couple minute break in between. And you stay in the practice. So trying to follow your breath and continue the breath awareness through that whole process. Because that's labor, it's not one contraction long. It goes on for, we don't know how long. And so having a sense of what that rhythm is like and what it's like to really deepen into, what becomes kind of a meditative state if you're really doing this like over time for several ice contractions. And that's really useful for labor too. So if people are practicing at home, try and do a few in a row. You can use a timer, or you can get a contraction timer on your phone and use that, or have somebody else time it for you, so that you can experience a few in a row. It is different and it is better. We do kind of learn as we go and get into a rhythm and a groove with it.
I did really like the contraction timer when I was in labor both times. Yeah. It helped me see the patterns and be like, oh, no, this one's probably false labor, because, I had a lot of false labors.
Yeah.
So it was really helpful. So if any pregnant ladies here don't already have one, they'll probably want it later. You might as well download it for this exercise.
There's lots of free ones that are super easy to use.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd like to teach you just one more mindfulness practice for coping with labor tonight. And it's called non-focused awareness. So this time, instead of giving the mind just one place that we're trying to focus it on, which was the breath last time, this time the goal is to have a diffuse awareness, so that everything that's around you becomes part of your experience and part of your coping. The idea is that, when we're really focused on just one thing, that thing looms larger than life in our experience. And, if it's your breath and that's really working for you, then great. But often it can be, that machine that's beeping in your room during labor and it's driving you crazy and you feel like, oh my God, if only that machine wasn't there, I'd be coping so well with this labor. Or it might be, the voice of your nurse you don't really like, but there she is talking to you and asking questions. And when we focus so intensely on this thing, which is usually we pick a thing we don't like, that thing kind of takes over our experience. When in reality, there's a whole bunch of other things going on too. Maybe you're in labor and this nurse has a voice you don't enjoy, but also your husband is rubbing your back. And also there's music playing in the room. And also there's a smell of aromatherapy, and there are other things going on. And so in non-focused awareness, it's a training the mind to give equal value and equal attention to everything that's going on, to create a balance, and kind of turn down the volume on things that we don't like, and increase our ability to be aware of things that are supportive.
I remember you did that with me, or maybe it was one of the nurses. I can't remember. It was so long ago.
Yeah.
But I feel like it was you, just kind of put your face in front of mine, because I was closing my eyes to get through it. And you were like, open your eyes and just look at my face. Don't try to shut it all out. Yeah. And that was really helpful.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Awesome.
Okay. Ready for another squat.
Okay. All right. So I'll lead you in. So take your time. You don't have to squat just yet.
Okay.
So with non-focused awareness, I will guide you through which sense to focus on. Some people like to have guidance for this, and others prefer to just kind of do it silently in their mind. Just since I'm teaching it, I'll guide you through, but for anyone who's using it in labor, do with it what you will. There's no right or wrong way. If it's working for you, then it's working, and great. So the senses that we're going to focus on are seeing, hearing, touch, and breath. when you are practicing seeing, you'll just allow your gaze to be soft. Usually kind of a downward gaze works well. If you're kind of looking around and eyes are roaming everywhere, that tends to really activate the mind and isn't that helpful. So kind of a gentle downward-ish gaze. Hearing, try and just let, whatever sounds are around you in your environment, in the room or outside or wherever they are, let them just float through, notice them, and then move on. We use touch as a sense rather than feeling, because feeling is really broad, and what does that mean? You could be feeling a lot of things, either emotionally or you could be feeling nausea, you could be feeling fatigue, and those things aren't, you can notice them, but they're not super helpful to you. So we're focusing on touch, which is like, what is touching you and what are you touching? Could be your hair against your neck, your feet against the floor, those types of touch sensations. And then breath is just back to breath awareness, that focus on the sensation of your breath, and especially the breath out. And as you do this, you're attempting to give equal value and equal weight to each thing that you notice without judgment. So if you're noticing what you're seeing, it could be, the floor, the rug, my feet. What you don't want to do is, the floor, the rug. Oh God, there's a stain on that rug. I should really clean that. Why did my kid drop banana and smush it in the, it's like you can go on this whole.
Or like my toes, if I have to look at them.
Right. Then you start telling yourself all sorts of mean things about yourself, right? So you want to just notice it, notice the color, notice the item, and then just move on without any kind of story about it. So does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm curious if I can actually do that. I'm very
all right.
A judger.
A little bit of an experiment, yeah. All right, so just before you start your squat, kind of go back to your breath for a minute. You're gonna get yourself back into a more focused state where you feel ready to bring your mind to a place of clarity. So focus on your next breath out. And then when you're ready, you can squat. And we'll start with seeing. So let your eyes be soft. Just noticing what's in your vision. And then letting go and moving on. We'll go to hearing. Whatever sounds are around you or on the recording. Touch. Notice what you are touching and what is touching you. And breath. Made it.
That was much easier.
Okay, good. Well, that's good because I'm going to have you do it one more time. I want you to try one more time, and for people on the recording to try once without guidance and narration.
Okay.
Because some people really like that. It deepens their experience when they can kind of just follow wherever makes sense for their attention to go. Like I'm noticing in the room that I'm in right now, while we were doing that, my cat came in and started meowing. So of course I'm noticing the cat. It doesn't make sense to fight the tide. I don't need to be seeing if my cat is right next to me meowing and I'm hearing that, or like there's birds outside chirping. So of course my attention's going to go to that. And so, for some people it works really well to have guidance like I just did, where you have kind of support to move through the senses, and others find it easier to just kind of flow with it. So I'm going to ask you to do one more so that anyone else who watches this can have that experience also.
All right.
All right. So just start with your breath, begin your own focus, and then when you're ready, you can just follow your senses as it makes sense to you. Tired by the end, huh? I know it's a lot to ask at 8:30 at night.
Yes, it was, Maeve.
Thanks for being such a good sport.
Well, thank you for doing all this. So,
yeah, of course.
Exchange.
Yeah. So I'm curious what you noticed. It sounded like the first time we did that, it really helped.
Yeah. Okay. So the first time it was really helpful. The second time, I got the first time I was focusing on sort of the lines in the house, and I was really sort of focused without looking around. This time I was like, oh, that's cool design pattern in the wall. That's a cool pattern in the couch. Let me listen to that. I guess I should check out this feeling thing. Oh, I don't like thinking about what's touching me. Let me go back to sounds. Like, oh, the birds are coming from Maeve's computer, not from my yard.
Yeah.
And then I just start. Then it gets harder and harder for me to not focus on the pain. Obviously, it's harder like my fourth minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Watts. But I liked having your voice better, but I'm also like a guided meditation person. I much prefer that to sitting on my own and listening to what my brain comes up with.
Yeah. Also, one distinction here is that when you're doing the wall sit, you're getting more and more tired, like the whole minute. It's getting harder. With a contraction, the peak is at the middle, and then it's tapering off. So for you or for anybody who's practicing, choosing something that is going to get harder for the whole minute is harder. I mean, labor is more intense than a wall sit, but the peak is earlier, and kind of, the second half of it, it's improving every second, every breath. So anyway, I just want to point that out to encourage people who are like, oh my God, I'm getting so tired. Or
what is this webinar telling me to be so afraid of all the pain?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so thank you for being the guinea pig for all of that. I just wanted to reiterate for anybody who wants to practice these type of mindfulness practices, practice makes the master. So the more you do them, the more likely they are to help you when you're in labor. Practicing once or twice is probably not going to be a huge, it's not a magic pill. It's not reasonable to expect that you're going to learn something, practice it once, and then be easily able to use it when you're in one of the most intense situations of your life.
Right.
So it really is about practicing. So choosing, something that you do every day, like brushing your teeth or making your breakfast or, anything like that, putting away laundry. choose a time where you can reliably practice every day or almost every day, even just for 5 minutes.
Mhm.
Breath awareness or non-focused awareness, or if people are interested in more of these types of practices, there's a whole bunch in the Birthing from Within book, both the original Birthing from Within and the new version, which is called Ancient Map to Modern Birth. There's a bunch more in there if people want to practice them. Yeah, I think that's it.
That was so great. I think that this is, look, I had pretty atypical experiences, especially, so the first time, it was a long labor, but that felt a lot more normal with the contractions and the pain level. And that was really, I didn't have you at that point.
Yeah.
And, I sort of made up my own visualizations and stuff. And it was, like you said, manageable.
Yeah.
It was taking too long.
Yeah.
And then the second time, with that real quick dilation that happened to me and the pain, and it all went out the window, to be honest. Just my fear and everything. And I know that's not typical when your contractions are 10 seconds apart and lasting for a minute or two each.
Yeah, so that's hard to cope with. Absolutely.
That was really hard and surprising as somebody who wanted unmedicated birth. And I was like, nope, I need that. I need some of that. It just, it wasn't going the way I planned. And I thought, if my labor is not going the way I planned, I'll allow my birth not to go the way I planned, right? Like, let me just roll with the punches. And, had I practiced more, I might have been a little bit more prepared for dealing with that level. But there was just this point where I just couldn't. I couldn't take it anymore. And so I think that point of practicing, I think I went over these a few times with you and a few times with Patty, but I never really practiced it daily. And that could have been maybe a little bit more helpful.
Maybe.
But, or not. And, and then my labor was totally insane, and I changed my whole plan, and now I have an adorable little terrorist in my house.
Yeah, one of my mentors likes to say, you labor the labor you get, not the labor you wanted or the labor you prepared for necessarily.
Right.
And, preparation is important for any kind of big life event like this. But there's also, surprises and the unknown and things that there could have been no way to anticipate. Some labors, are real straightforward and don't have a lot of that. And then sometimes there is. And I think, that is a really compassionate use of drugs in labor. Not all labors are created equal. It's not like some women are strong and they can do it and some women are weak and they can't do it. Labors are different. Some labors are easier. And some are unusually hard for whatever reason, being super long or sometimes super short.
Yeah. Really I've heard some stories about the pain. Well, and mine too. The labor was long technically, but the time I dilated was so short.
Yeah. Or some people have, unusual back pain or whatever. There's lots of things that can change a labor. And so everything's on the table, from mindfulness practices to epidurals and, doulas and there's all sorts of things. So, but yeah, I just wanted to say, I think there is a really good, compassionate use of medication for pain in labor. And, thank goodness that is there and available,
I thought I was going to go insane. I was like, this thing will make me crazy. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing. That was awesome. And I would love to also encourage people, and I will, to watch this, who are just dealing with chronic pain or recurring pain or anything like that, because I think that this is, it's helpful. Just me as an athlete who's gone through so many things, and you know, really a lot of injuries and chronic pains. I always tell my clients when I work with them, you know, the mental aspect, the fear of that pain coming back, or when it comes back, not knowing how long, or if this time it's going to last forever.
Right.
So having those skills that can help quiet your mind and just get you to get through it and not panic.
Yeah. Yeah. There's actually some really cool research recently showing that that type of mental adaptation where you are reducing the mental suffering is then literally reducing people's perceptions of how much pain they're in also.
All right.
So
Cool.
their pain scale numbers are going down, even though nothing has changed with their condition. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's amazing to know, and what an amazing tool. And you're right. Yeah, the fear of the pain or of the unknown, right? Often is such a big part of why it hurts, or you know, why it's so difficult.
And I think that's a big reason why I chose the pain medication, was I was like, if it gets worse than this, and I hear it does when, you know, like they're crowning or whatever, there's that one part. And I was like, I don't want to feel that. I mean, I'm sure I could. I don't want to, and I'm not okay with that.
And you get to make that choice, which I think is
how lucky are we that we get to choose our birth and have options out there for us as things progress.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Maeve.
You're welcome.
Now you can go have a nice, quiet rest of your evening with your daughter.
Yeah.
Steve, is he home?
Yep.
All right. Give him a hello from me.
I will.
All right. Well, thanks, Maeve, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Good night.
Bye.